All right, Lane Kiffin and former Gamecock receiver Juice Wells troll South Carolina. Locked on Gamecock starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. I appreciate you guys following along. Thank you for making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We are a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. I've told you about these guys before. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but make sure you go follow along with them. All right, guys, we got a fun show. I want to start off by saying something and just kind of address the elephant in the room. Spectrum has been a nightmare in the neighborhood I live in out in Lexington. I fully understand the frustration that everyone is like probably having to go through right now with how up and down some of the audio and video quality has been on the podcasts that have been coming out. That's why there's been a delay on shows. That's why there's been, a gap in some of the show dates that have come out. I apologize. I promise you I'm working on everything I can do to fix it. We've tried a billion different things, and nobody is more frustrated about it than me. Trust me. All I want to do is come here, hit record, go, and let's talk football and all things South Carolina. And it's been very, very frustrating that we have not been able to do that. But I appreciate your patience. I promise you we're working to get it fixed. And like I said, I appreciate you guys joining along. Now, we got a fun show today. I'm going to get petty. I'll be honest. I'm going to get pretty petty today. Lane Kiffin and Juice Wells posted a video yesterday. It's a video of Juice Wells, but Lane Kiffin posted it from his Twitter. And I'm going to tell you why I think it was not a good idea from Lane Kiffin for a number of reasons. And I'll be honest with you right off the bat. I am going to be probably a little bit of a homer about this in defense of South Carolina. And maybe I'm being sensitive to what he posted. I don't know. Say whatever you want. But I think that Lane Kiffin coming out with this video yesterday was not a good move. And if you missed the video, it's a very simple, quick video. It is, pardon me, it's a video of Juice Wells, former South Carolina receiver, running a route and making a one-handed catch. It's in black and white, it's in slow-mo. And it took me a second to even realize what was going on. But it's a video of him catching a pass in not even in shells, in like a t-shirt and shorts, obviously at Ole Miss. And in the background, the theme song they chose to play for it was 2001. Everyone knows why he chose to play 2001 Space Odyssey on that video. And here's the thing that I can't wrap my head around with Lane Kiffin. First off, I love Lane Kiffin. I think he's great for the sport. I think love the fact that he turned his career around. Now, I will say I need to see more consistency out of Lane Kiffin because that's not something we've seen. This is the longest job he's had, and it's been 4 years. So that's something I think that, he could definitely work on. But I like Lane Kiffin. I will maintain. Oh, we dropped the pencil. I'll maintain. I think he is one of the top 2 to 3 play callers and offensive minds in all of football, not just college football, all of football. I think him, Sark, you could argue Ryan Day maybe from an offensive play calling standpoint. I like Lane Kiffin a lot. I'm just asking why. What was necessary out of doing this? Do you have beef with Shane Beamer? No. Did South Carolina do something wrong in losing Juice Wells? No. Now listen, I'm new. I'm new to this whole thing. Right? I don't know the full backstory. I'm sure that a lot of you guys can tell me. I want to hear in the comments. Maybe give me some more of the background that I'm missing. Because I'm having a hard time understanding what the point of this was. And listen, I love trash talk. I'm a very big proponent of, I'm sure some of you are going to be rubbed the wrong way when I say this, but I think sportsmanship takes a backseat to winning. If it's baseball, I love bat flips. If it's football, talk your blank, talk your crap. I love it. I love it. I'm just confused as to what the point of this was. It seems like it was just an unnecessary dig at South Carolina. And here's the thing that I can't wrap my head around with Juice Wells being the vessel for this. And that's this. Juice Wells had a phenomenal season at South Carolina. 2022, he had 68 receptions, 928 yards, 6 touchdowns, had over 13.5 yards per reception. That's fantastic. Then, from what I've gathered, what I remember from covering the SEC, not just South Carolina, but the SEC as a whole, kind of felt like he quit on his team, right? Felt like he just, middle of the season, early in the season, because he only had 3 receptions for 37 yards. Oh, he was battling injury. He was, it was up and down. We don't know when he's going to return. It felt like he quit on the team. I think if you ask a lot of fans, they would probably agree with me that he quit on the team. And here's the other part of it. If you're going through a breakup, right? We've all been through breakups. You want to win the breakup, whether it's losing weight, finding someone that you think is better, happiness, success. The best revenge is success. Brother, you left and South Carolina replaced you immediately and got more production at your position. You had 68 catches for 928 yards, 6 touchdowns, over 13.5 yards per catch. Xavier Legette had 71 receptions, 1,255 yards, 7 touchdowns, and over 17.5 yards per catch. In less games, by the way. In less games. You had more receptions, more yards, more touchdowns, more yards per catch. More receptions per game. More production. You had more production out of Xavier Legette. Here's another point that I keep trying to make to y'all that I've said this. We did this on a different show when I was talking about who can step up at receiver. And this is something I'm very, very high on with South Carolina. I don't know who the guy's going to be this year. I think it's going to be Nick Harbor, as I've said 1,000 times. Whoever it's going to be, there's going to be somebody that makes a jump in production at South Carolina at the receiver position, because we see it every single year, it seems like, over the last 10 years. Like, let's keep in mind, Xavier Legette, all the numbers I just said to you, over 1,250 yards, 71 receptions, 7 TDs, blah, blah, blah. Let's keep in mind that the year before, when Juice Wells was the guy, Legette, who's a first-round draft pick, by the way, Legette, as a senior, remember, he stayed for an extra year. He was a senior. He had only 18 catches, 160 yards, 3 touchdowns, less than 10 yards of reception, whatever. You saw it with Josh Vann in 1 year to the next. I mean, I have it in the notes. We can go through it if we want to, but I broke this down before. Like, the numbers you need at receiver, where you jump from 1 year to the next. Like, I mean, you're the average. Like, you saw it with Deebo Samuel, and we've already brought it up. Like, I think with Nick Harbor, but like, whoever, there's somebody on this roster going into this season that's going to replace Juice Wells again from a production standpoint. But here's the thing that I keep going back to. If you're Lane Kiffin, why I don't want to say poke the bear, because I know South Carolina's come off a 5-7 season. I get that. But if you're Lane Kiffin, what are you doing, man? Tell me a time, if you're Lane Kiffin, in a moment like this, and maybe I'm just missing it because there's one that stands out to me. Tell me a time when all this trash talk has worked out really well for you, when you've done it so blatantly. I mean, there's one that I keep thinking of. There's one where it feels like, to me, he doesn't get it. 2021 Alabama. Now, I'll tell you a story. I have a lot of friends close to that program. One of my closest friends happens to be the daughter of the former coach. Lane Kiffin left that team during bowl prep the week of the national championship game in 2016. Offensive coordinator of that team, phenomenal job as the offensive coordinator there. 3 straight offensive players of the year in the SEC at 3 different positions. 2016 was the best Alabama team I have ever seen outside of 2020. Didn't win a national championship. Lane Kiffin quit the week of the national championship. From what I was told, from people that I'm close to, that are close to that situation, Lane Kiffin showed up to practice, made an ass of himself in front of Saban because he had already got the job at FAU, and made some comment of, "You wouldn't be here without me. I'm the reason that we are here." There might have been some celebratory drinking involved. That's how he left Tuscaloosa. So for Juice Wells to go to Lane Kiffin and quit on his team, trust me, Lane Kiffin, that's not anything new to him. But if you're Kiffin, and he's gotten better now, but remember in 2021 when he was still, I feel like, very sophomoric and immature-ish and all those things. I don't think immature-ish is a word, but immature. He came into that game like he had some chip on his shoulder that Saban did something wrong to him and said, get your popcorn ready. Get your popcorn ready. And they got blown out. So my question is, I don't understand what you're doing. Dude, just speak softly, carry a big kick, whatever that old saying is. Let your work do the talk for you, brother. Like, what are you doing? And here's the thing. We have talked about this. This is a dead horse that we have already beat in the very small time that I have been here doing this show. Ole Miss is coming to South Carolina on October 5th. This adds, hate to use the pun, but more juice to that game, right? I think South Carolina fans, especially that student section, are already real geared up about seeing Juice Wells in an opposing uniform inside of Williams-Brice Stadium, as am I. But if you're Ole Miss, I've already told you before, that game that seems so unwinnable and everyone thinks they're a top 5 team, they're destined for the playoff, and blah, 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 blah. You're 10-8 on the road, or 11-8 on the road in the last 3 years combined. 8 of those losses are by a combined 19 points. It is not anything new for him to go on the road and lay an egg. Again, let's think about this. The last 3 years, you're only 11-8 on the road. Only 11-8 on the road or neutral site games. That includes bowl games. But in those 8 losses, you lost by almost 20 points per game. And you got to go to Willie B in the first week of October. I'll tell you something else. You better pray that this South Carolina team isn't a winning team. That's a number that somebody threw out last week about Mark Stoops. He's like 2-28 at Kentucky against teams that ended the season with a winning record. You look at Ole Miss on the road. Over the last 2 years, they have one win in a true road game, not a bowl game, neutral site, whatever. They have one win in a true road game against a team that ended the year with a winning record. Of all your road games, well, I feel like I'm not explaining this correctly and to myself. Only one true road game were you able to beat somebody that finished the year with a winning record, and it was Tulane. I'm looking at these wins, and I'm seeing Vandy, Georgia Tech, Auburn. I just don't know if talking blank was the best move for Lane Kiffin with those numbers to back up whatever blank he's trying to talk. That's all I have to say about that. It was a lot, as usual. Every single time we come on here, I think, you know what, guys? Let's do a quick 8-minute first segment, get the show going and all that. And lo and behold, we're 13 minutes in again. But listen, I appreciate you guys joining us along. I don't want to jinx it. Seems like things are going well from the connection standpoint. Appreciate you guys again. Now, listen, before we get into segment 2, we're going to talk about Dylan Stewart and the post that he put out yesterday on Twitter. My goodness, if you aren't pumped for that kid for his rookie campaign, for lack of better words, his freshman year, you should be after that. We'll get to that in segment 2. Before that, I want to give you guys another shout out with our good friends at Game Time and the Game Time app. Now, I've already told you multiple times. We went to see Creed the other day, and it was fantastic. I had a friend that put on Game Time before they went down there, and the tickets, I think dropped right before. I keep wanting to say kickoff, and that's not right. Right before the first song, down to $60. 2 rows back, $60. That is the thing with Game Time that I love so much. It takes the guessing out of any sort of your ticket buying needs and or purchases. So prioritize last minute deals. You see up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, all that. They have flash deals. They have zone deals. You can see when your section goes on sale. And the other best part of this is you get up to the minute all in pricing. So you're not sitting there with what happens to be every time I'm on Ticketmaster or Uber Eats, where it's like, hey, this is going to cost $70. Oh, never mind. There's fees. It's going to cost $1 million. You don't get that with Game Time. Game Time does a phenomenal job telling you up front what the total is going to be. You have Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the entire ticketing industry. I love these guys. They do a phenomenal job. Make sure you go to the Game Time app, sign up today, use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. You get $20 off your first purchase. It's a great deal. And they're doing stuff all summer long, not just with, like I said, sports, but with Major League Baseball as well. They do a great job. Make sure you guys go check them out. All right. That is all for segment 1. We will be back shortly here with segment 2. Make sure you stay tuned to Locked On Gamecocks. All right, guys, welcome back to Locked On Gamecocks. Before we get started into segment 2 and talk about the Dylan Stewart, I'll call it a thirst trap, whatever you want to call it, just really showing off his first several months in the weight room here in Columbia. Before we start that, though, I want to ask you this. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN all day, every day? We're about to start the Olympics. There's going to be a ton of stuff. Finally, it feels like they were able to get into NFL starting, all that good stuff. But if you are watching that, are you having to turn the volume down constantly all day, every day because of the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, so I looked at this yesterday, and I'm scrolling on Twitter like I do way too often. And as I'm looking at Twitter, I think it was Brad Crawford, our buddy, who's just always got his finger on the pulse of South Carolina sports. Does a phenomenal job at 24/7 Sports or 247 Sports. Love Brad. And he posted this photo from Dylan Stewart. Dylan Stewart only has like 6,000 Twitter followers, guys. Get out and go follow that guy. Make him feel loved. But he posted this, and it's from his account, and it just says Year Uno, and it's a side-by-side pic of him in high school, or I think when he first got to campus, because he's an early enrollee, versus what he looks like right now. Now, listen, if I was more professional, I would have brought up the picture. I'll be honest. I would have brought up the picture. That would have been a smart thing to do. You guys are watching it. I know I'm a visual learner as well. That's what I should have done. If we're being honest, I am not pressing my luck with Spectrum right now, okay? I don't know that if bringing up one picture is going to result in this entire internet crashing and burning. So we're not going to do that. But go to his Twitter account and check this out. When I tell you the transformation this kid has made from his body from the start of what would be, I guess, off-season workouts in January to now, oh my. Like, it is now. It's a combine picture, right? Like it's very much. This is what you wear the underwear Olympics, as I would joke about with the combine, and it's, I mean, ripped, but not just the twitchy muscles, the size, every single thing that this kid has. Like the physical difference in his body is alarming at best. Is the only way I know how to put it. It is. Like, if you're a South Carolina fan, you have to feel real excited about what that kid can do in an area of need that you have not had at that position coming off the edge. I mean, listen, I don't think he's going to be Clowney, because no one is. Like, I mean, that is a generational player. But you got a 5-star kid. Like, I think he's like a 5-star plus, right? Like, I mean, he's a 5-star on the sites. I feel like that were important for him to be a 5-star on. And all of the word and the conversations about him coming out of spring ball, coming out of offseason workouts, and then from this picture especially, like, I think that's one of the biggest things at this position. I'll tell you what, I remember looking this up on 24/7 a couple years ago, and the edge position, like, specifically. Now, in the past on 247, for example, you know, they have like your player rankings, top 240, or I guess top 247. ESPN is like their top 300, whatever. But on 247 specifically, they have your player rankings, your top 100, your high school state rankings, like your position rankings, all that. So you see like a top 100 player, and he's like the number 12 receiver, number 6 overall in his state, number 80 overall. Like, that's what I'm saying. So that specific position, the edge rushing position, which, as we all know, is one of the most important positions and highest paid when you look at the NFL in this sport at every level. It's quarterback, left tackle, edge rush. Receivers starting to get up there as well. But those are the 3 most important spots. And since that has become such a more honed in skill, right? I used to work with Chuck Smith from Atlanta, who played with the Falcons for a long time. We did a show together for years in Atlanta, and he opened up a pass rush academy, and it's like all the big names go there because there's so many small nuances to this specific position. It's like that, and I'm sure in all sports at every position. But when you talk about like the jump you can make, just fine tuning and honing in your skills and like hand fighting and like coming off the edge and the speed rush and all that stuff. It's the jump you can make and the improvement you can make at this position is wild. So that's one of the reasons why it's more focused in on it. It's why it's more important. But I remember when 247 finally in 2021, I believe, they made the edge rush position its own specific position to rank players, right? Before it was like weak side defensive end. But they finally changed it to where they're like, all right, we're going to look at just this position and we're going to give it its own ranking. Hadn't done it until 2021, I believe. From 2021 to 2023, there was only 10 total players at that position that were 5 stars, like in their composite rankings. Only 10. 8 of them went to the SEC. 6 of them went to Bama, but 8 of them went to the SEC. Now, I bring up the Bama part of it because I don't know if you've been keeping track. Will Anderson was not a part of that. Dallas Turner was, and he, of course, turns out to be one of the best, edge rushers in the SEC, gets to be a first-round draft pick, all that kind of stuff. But if you're not physically ready, I look at guys like Keon Keeley, who's a top 10 overall player. Some people have him in the top 5. Hasn't sniffed the field at Alabama yet. I mean, there's a lot of guys like that. If you're not physically ready, there's only so much you can do from that position. Jadeveon Clowney was beyond physically ready, right? This was looking at him in the picture posted yesterday. It feels very clear that he is physically ready. Now, will that translate onto the field? I don't know. But I'm looking at some of these numbers, right? I bring up some of the numbers from what you see on in the SEC over the years. Last year, I'm just looking at sack leaders. The highest sack total you had from a freshman was from Suntarine Perkins at Ole Miss, and it was a 3.5 total sacks. That was tied for 35th in the conference, right? Now, 2022 is a little bit different. You had a guy named Harold Perkins at LSU who might have been the best defensive player in the entire country with 8.5 sacks. That ranked 3rd, and he was a true freshman. Going back to 2021, I'm looking. Dallas Turner at Alabama had 8.5, right? So 2020, Will Anderson had 7 at Alabama. Now, let's be clear. Will Anderson is a freak of nature. The other freshman on that list in 2020 was B.J. Ojulari from LSU, who had 4. So I guess what I'm getting at here, and I'm going to go back 1 year so we have a wider range. Then we have Georgia Azeez Ojulari, BJ's brother, when he was a freshman at Georgia in 2019, 5.5 sacks. That ranked 13th in the conference. What I'm getting at here is this. That's a 5-year sample size. You had 5.5, 5, 7, 8.5, 8.5, 4.5. What's the bar we're setting for what we need out of Stewart this year? I think 5 is fair, right? I think 5 is fair. And going through this real quick, and this is like from the production last year. Now remember, you only had 21 sacks last year total. 21 sacks was equivalent to the, oh man, I'm still scrolling here, and I had this written 105th in the country. 105th in the country. And as I've told you before, it was also dead last in the SEC, only 21 total sacks. So if you're looking at that and you're saying like, all right, like who from this team is going to be able to come in and what is the production that we need out of them? Because I don't think you need double digit necessarily. It'd be great if you could get it. If you get 8.5, it'd be great. But if we get 5, you get 5. I brought this up yesterday. You might not have heard it because of the stupid internet, but like I brought this up yesterday. If you can get, you might be able to. I'm not exaggerating when I say this. You might be able to get a quarter of the production you had from your total sacks that you got as a team last year. You might be able to get that in the first week against Old Dominion. Old Dominion had 62 sacks allowed. It was dead last in the country last year in 13 games. It's over 5 per game. You might be able to get those numbers up in that first game. Now, you want that to happen against better competition, obviously. But my whole point is, in this very long, drawn-out long-winded segment here. If Stewart can come in and get 5, and he can get you some meaningful ones, and here's the other thing too, sacks are great, love it. Tackles for loss, love it. We have tangible statistics we can look at and feel good about, right? Feel warm inside when we see him. What we really would like out of this is get to the quarterback, pressures, hits, hurries, all that. That's what you need to see a spike in. But if you can get to 5 sacks, and man, if you can get them in some good situations and big moments, love it. Love it. Because you are going to see in this year, especially, there's a lot of good offensive lines in this conference. But the top ones that you keep seeing over and over and over again are the ones like Cole Kubelik posted and stuff like that, like Texas, Georgia. They're not on the schedule. LSU is. LSU's got 2 really, really good tackles, including the best one in the country in Will Campbell. But if you could figure out a way to get consistent pressure, because you don't have to face the bulk of those lines that we just talked about. I already told you, Bama gave up 49 last year, and it's roughly the same guys coming back besides the center. So, there's a lot of opportunity there. But like, what do you need out of him? I don't think it's more than 5. Can you just get some of those other statistics that we don't get to see get as much love in the box score, right? We don't need to be box score warriors and be like, well, he had 5 sacks and 11 tackles for loss. Like, how many hurries, how many hits, how many QB pressures can we get out of him? I think after seeing that picture yesterday, I'm a little bit higher, actually a lot higher than I was before, because physically that kid is absolutely ready. Anyway, that is all for segment 2. I appreciate you guys sticking along. As I said, like a very long-winded, drawn-out segment 2. But we are having a lot of fun today, so I appreciate you guys sticking around. We'll get to segment 3. In segment 3, we're going to be very quick. Talk about the Gamecocks that are going over to Paris to compete in the Olympics. Should be a very exciting time starting tomorrow in Paris. All right, guys, welcome back into Locked On Gamecocks. It is our 3rd and final segment of the day. I appreciate you guys joining us. Now, listen, here's the deal. I'll be honest. I brought this up more times than I probably should have today. If there was ever time for Spectrum to mess up, it honestly might be best that it would happen in this segment, because we're about to try to pronounce some names and countries, and my Milledgeville, Georgia education is probably not going to help too much with it. But tomorrow, we'll have a graphic for this later. Pretty exciting stuff. I'm trying to bring this up real quick on my phone. I should have done this earlier, of course. But South Carolina being represented at the Olympics here starting tomorrow night. I think tomorrow, we're recording this on Thursday, so tomorrow is the first day of the opening ceremonies and all that good stuff. And I think you get like swimming and other stuff like that coming up the days after. So I'm pulling up right now how many South Carolina Olympians were in the 2020 Olympics. So we're doing a thing for this. You had 10 total Olympians in 2020 going to Tokyo. 3 of them were from the U.S. and 7 total countries represented. Represented. Goodness, Chris, just learn the English language. Looking at the SEC as a whole, it's cool to see this conference dominate in so many different ways. This is before you even had Texas and Oklahoma, and Texas has a ton of Olympians. But at that point, you had South Carolina, who had 10 total Olympians, which I believe ranked 10th most in the SEC. The SEC as a whole in that Olympics, you had all 14 teams were represented, 206 total Olympians, 82 that represented the U.S., and they also represented 55 different countries. So going into 2024, here's what you have from South Carolina. This is pretty cool. The opening ceremony is Friday. It will feature South Carolina women's basketball coach Dawn Staley, who will walk with the First Lady Jill Biden. That's pretty cool. Staley's not coaching, but she has 2 former players that will be in there as well. By the way, South Carolina has 11 total. 11 total or 10 total? 11 total athletes that are going to be in the Olympics this year. That's almost double what Clemson has. Clemson only has 6. But you have 11 from South Carolina, as well as your head coach, who might be the best head coach for any sport in the entire conference. That we're going to dive into that next week, because people talk about Kirby being the best coach, obviously in college football. Dawn Staley is probably pound for pound the best head coach for any sport in this conference. But here are the University of South Carolina athletes that will be there. You have Aaliyah Abrams for women's track from Guyana, Letitia Amir from Canada for women's basketball. I feel like I'm pronouncing the last name wrong. Francisco Cerundolo from Argentina, men's tennis. Sabrina D'Angelo, Canada, women's soccer. Anas Asai from Morocco, men's track. Eric Favors from Ireland, doing men's track shot put. Quincy Hall, men's track, doing the 400, representing the U.S. Thomas Parabonio, Ecuador, men's swimming. Tatiana Sakatone, Moldova. Beautiful this time of year. Women's swimming. Julia Vincent from South Africa, women's diving. And, of course, the GOAT, the unicorn, Asia Wilson, United States, women's basketball. So pretty cool stuff there. Just 11 different people representing 9 different countries, 2 for the U.S. Should be a lot of fun. Like I said, we'll have a graphic that comes out like that about that tomorrow on social media. But that is all for today's show. Guys, I just want to once again say thank you so much for the patience and dealing with this whole thing with the internet. You guys have been a fantastic audience. I appreciate all the comments in the comments section and any of the input you guys have had. So we will be back tomorrow on Friday as well, figuring out something to talk about, whatever you guys want to. That is usually the day we do our Q&A from y'all as well. So make sure you submit those on Twitter. Follow me at Vern Funquist, CFB. Follow us at Locked On SEC on Twitter as well. Before we go, I just want to remind you, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and is now available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right, that is all for me. Thank you so much. We will see y'all tomorrow.